Friends, believe it or not, there are people out there in the world that don't like anime. And friends, believe it or not, I used to be one of them. The problem is that many of the most popular series are gargantuan, seemingly impenetrable pieces of media with a bajillion episodes like One Piece, and many of those series are also filled to the brim with so many of the genre's cliches and quirks, many of which to people who aren't familiar with anime can be irritating and confusing and just a big turnoff. However, just like with death metal, Star Trek Voyager, and IPAs, there's something there for everybody as long as you're open to the idea and you're willing to try new things. Welcome aboard Space Castle, where our continuing mission is to search the universe for all things nerdy. I'm your Captain DT, and
excuse me. IPAs? Really? That terrible piss water that breweries push out because, they don't know how to make a proper f***ing Saison or raspberry sour?
A good IPA is great.
It's vague. It's got no detail, no character. It's unformed.
What the hell are you talking about, Goldblum?
It's a big conspiracy.
What's a conspiracy?
Everything.
Goldblum, you don't even have taste buds.
Apparently, neither do you.
Anyway, if you're willing to put forth the effort and dig into something you don't think you'll enjoy, unlike my stubborn co-pilot here, I guarantee there's anime out there that you'll not only be surprised by, but even come to enjoy. And I bet there's even several anime out there that would act as a gateway and would drive you towards wanting to discover more anime and become even a regular viewer of the genre. Here's a handful of some of the best anime for people who don't think they like anime. Now, first of all, let me preface this by saying there won't be anything from Hayao Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli on this list. That's because I think they're all timeless works and I think they're endlessly accessible, and honestly, I think they transcend simply being called anime. You can fully enjoy the likes of My Neighbor Totoro, Princess Mononoke, and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and also still be turned off by anime in general. Second of all, this list is not for all you hardcore anime fans out there, but I would love it if you stuck around. I know some of you are going to want to jump into the comments and say things like, well, these are some of the best anime series of all time, like no kidding, and like, this is just a bunch of mainstream shit, but that's kind of the point. The shows I'm going to talk about on this list are known to big fans of anime as being universally loved staples, and that's why I've chosen them, is that so people who don't think they like anime can find these universally loved shows and discover that anime is more than just screaming and highly exaggerated facial expressions and thousands of episodes where like only 50 of those episodes really have something happening in them. These are shows that helped me, somebody who at one point in my life didn't think he enjoyed anime, discover that there's an ocean of shows out there to discover and something for even the most hesitant and tentative of viewers. And I'm avoiding spoilers in this video because I want everybody watching to go out and try these shows out and experience firsthand how awesome they are. Now, this first show is only 4 seasons long and it's actually about to wrap up in the fall of 2023. So you can get caught up, you can watch the end of the final season with all your friends, you can be cool, you can fit in, and you can talk about the show with authority in real time. And what's also cool is the fact that the entirety of the show is available on Hulu without any add-ons or extra subscriptions or anything like that. The episodes are only half an hour long and the show is endlessly accessible. Aside from being really f***ing violent and disturbing. I'm talking about Attack on Titan, based on the incredibly well-selling manga series from Hajime Isayama. The animated series is about a post-apocalyptic world that's been overrun by giant, human-looking creatures called Titans who are seemingly mindless but are hell-bent on eating people, and they are willing to destroy anything that gets between them and that goal, including the giant walls surrounding the Roman-esque cities and villages where the last vestiges of humanity live. Now, they've prospered and lived in peace for over a century now, but that peace is broken by an attack on one of the outermost walls and the city that is directly behind that wall. What ensues from there is honestly a really bloody and scary and violent, but also really touching and poignant story about survival, maintaining one's own humanity while ensuring that survival. It's about loyalty and the importance of instilling trust in your friends and family. It also throws some really interesting concepts your way, including oppressive ruling classes and the disparity between the working class and the wealthy classes. It's really intriguing and interesting and really well done. And yeah, it also has that kind of subversive quality to it. It's like something you'd rent on video cassette in the 90s, and you got it because your parents didn't know what it was and they didn't know any better, but you did, and that's why you waited until they went to bed before you watched it, because they would beat your ass if they caught you watching it. And it's also the type of thing where, like, you wouldn't sleep that night and you'd be a wreck at school the next day because of the shit you saw. Thanks, Ninja Scroll. Attack on Titan is played completely straight, and it's really compelling. It's a dark, creepy, violent fantasy, and there's a mystery to the world and to the Titans themselves, and the plot is continuously moving forward. There are no stretches of episodes where people are just standing around making faces and screaming. There is a lot of screaming, but it's all because of the things I just talked about before. And just to give you one more reason to watch Attack on Titan, the characters all do battle with the Titans by using this really cleverly designed gadget called the omnidirectional mobility gear. What it is, it's basically something they strap around their waist. It's like a steampunk design that allows them to zip around like Spider-Man on these retractable cables while dual-wielding swords. It's badass. It's really great. The show is just super well animated and well acted and well produced, and it's something you will enjoy even if you don't think you like anime. Next up, we have a series that was created in 1995 by Hideaki Anno. Anno was something of a rock star who, while he was attending the Osaka University of the Arts studying animation, he was also working on a little-known series called Macross. He was so busy working on feature films and some of his own projects that he basically dropped out of Osaka University by just not giving them any more money. And this dude very shortly afterwards answered a magazine ad for animators to work on a feature film called Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the second film to be written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Anno showed Miyazaki some of his drawings, and he was so impressed that he hired Anno on to do many of Nausicaa's most pivotal and complex scenes. So Anno really knew his stuff. By the way, the show I'm building up towards talking about is a show called Neon Genesis Evangelion. And if you grew up in the 90s, you are completely familiar with the name, and I'm sure you're vaguely aware of the series even if you didn't watch anime, because it was a goddamn cultural phenomenon. The show follows the story of 14-year-old Shinji Ikari, who is growing up in a post-apocalyptic alternate timeline 2015 Tokyo. I say post-apocalyptic because half of the world's population was wiped out by a cataclysmic event, which I won't spoil here because it's very central and integral to the plot of the story, but suffice it to say it deals with kaiju, the melting of the Antarctic ice cap, and everybody's just generally having a really bad time. Giant, incredibly powerful kaiju monsters called angels, for reasons that are honestly too dense for me to get into in this video, are consistently attacking a city called Tokyo 3, which has replaced the original Tokyo because it was not only flooded in a cataclysm, but it was also blown up with a nuclear bomb. Like I said, it's a bad time for everybody in this series. Anyway, the only way to defeat these angels and keep them from destroying the city is to fight them with giant biomechanical robots that are piloted by young people who interface and synchronize with the robots through their nervous systems. The main character, Shinji, is called to Tokyo 3 by his father, who is actually the director of the paramilitary force that designed and sort of safeguards and operates the Evangelions. And he's called there even though they've been estranged for a few years, because his father is fully aware that his son will be able to synchronize with one of the Evangelions and fight the giant robots and continue the fight to save humanity. If all this sounds really dense and confusing, it's because it is. But the show is really clever in that it tells the story from Shinji's perspective, and he is our surrogate for the story. So Shinji's feelings of being overwhelmed and confused after being thrust in this crazy global war between giant kaiju and giant robots is ours as well. And we're told information as we need to know it, as Shinji's told that information as well. It all comes together really, really well, trust me. And what's also interesting is that the show also acts as a deconstruction of the mecha subgenre of anime. Anno is a huge fan of shows like Space Battleship Yamato and Mobile Suit Gundam, and the show acts as a deconstruction of those shows and that genre, much like Watchmen was a deconstruction of the superhero genre. Both are incredibly clever explorations of the underbelly of their respective genres. Just the emotional and physical and psychological toll of having the weight of the world on your shoulders, having to make these terrible decisions while being locked in these horrible battles with these villains, and also the reconciliation emotionally of having to make all these terrible decisions that result in collateral damage while you're trying to save the world. Neon Genesis Evangelion is just a masterstroke of storytelling and Japanese animation without falling into the pit of silliness or exaggeration to keep the audience engaged. It's no wonder why it became like the forefront example of the genre was actually trying to deconstruct, and why it's still to this day an incredibly enduring and long-lasting bit of pop culture. There's only 26 episodes of the series, and it's all fully readily available for binging uncensored on Netflix right now. And there's also the alternate ending movie if you're curious and you want to see more. And you're gonna want to, because Evangelion is just f***ing awesome. Alright, this is a long episode and we've only covered about half of what I want to talk about, so why don't we take a brief interlude to prepare you mentally for the second half of this episode, and you can also go tinkle if you need to. Hi, I hope you remember to wipe front to back. Now, the second half of this episode is going to be an absolute love fest for a man named Shinichiro Watanabe. And if you're a fan of anime, you know what's about to come next. And if you're not familiar with anime at all, you are in for a treat. The next anime series in this video for people who think they don't like anime is a 2004 series called Samurai Champloo. Now, this dope-ass show is one of the many reasons why Cartoon Network is fondly remembered as being a hub for anime for kids in America at the time. This show is just so much fun, and it's one of the shows where you can constantly catch episodes late at night when you should have been sleeping or doing homework. The show takes place in Japan's Edo period, but it's full of all sorts of anachronisms, including hip-hop being the backbone for the show's music. The show follows three main characters, Mugen, Jin, and Fu, each of wildly different temperaments and personalities, who come together by chance and end up becoming traveling partners as they chase down the show's mysterious MacGuffin of a character, the samurai who smells of sunflowers. The show deals with the themes of tolerance, self-discovery, acceptance of death, and it's also a celebration of life before we each sort of arrive at that inevitable conclusion. And none of the characters actually fit the sort of societal norms of the period at the time, so it presents these themes in a really challenging way, and a compelling one at that. The show's animation style is wild and fun and kinetic, and it sometimes employs this sort of half-hand style to convey the action and speed of the really awesome fight scenes. This can be a little bit off-putting and kind of strange at first, but once you understand the energy that the animators are going for, it'll totally make sense and you'll totally dig it. And the way the story is told is actually kind of a little bit odd too. There's a lot of like record scratch sort of flashbacks and lots of asides that kind of fill in the plot as we go along. The production and writing style of the show is actually wildly offbeat too. Shinichiro Watanabe designed the show so that various creators could come and go at their leisure as part of core pieces of the production team. And the show wasn't written fully and fleshed out before they went into production. It was actually written as they were going. They were making it up as they went along. So the story feels wild but organic, and it all comes together because they're brilliant writers, but they were making it up as they went along. It's the equivalent of like a really good jazz band up on stage just improvising and having a good time jamming, and a really cool band leader who's gently directing them as they go without actually enforcing any firm boundaries. In fact, calling Samurai Champloo jazz is probably the best way to describe it. It's like barely contained energy, and it's just wildly charismatic and fun and interesting, and it'll get you all fired up, and it's going to hold your interest indefinitely. Once again, this series tops out at 26 episodes with a very satisfying conclusion. You can binge the entire series on Hulu, and I'm sure you're going to be binging it because it's just awesome. And finally, we have another show that was also created by Shinichiro Watanabe, and it's probably the grand poobah of accessible anime for people who don't yet realize they like anime. It is a gosh damn juggernaut of a pop cultural phenomenon, and it has been endlessly influential since it came out in 1998. If there is one show in this video that I can press on you to watch in its entirety, it is this show. It is Cowboy Bebop. Now, if you go to Google right now, chances are you're going to see that Cowboy Bebop was created by Hajime Yatate, which is accurate, but not 100% accurate, because Hajime Yatate was actually the really cool collective pseudonym for Sunrise, the animation studio which produced Cowboy Bebop. The characters were created by Shinichiro Watanabe, who you might remember from 90 seconds ago when I was gushing about him. The show is a combination of like space opera and cyberpunk and classic noir and western themes. Watanabe always had this amazing knack for combining genres into something really cool and familiar, but also wholly original at the same time, and Cowboy Bebop might be the pinnacle of all of that. Set in the year 2071, the show takes place 50 years after the cataclysmic explosion of an astral gate. Astral gates, of course, being like hyperspace jump points for ships to travel at light speed. The explosion destroyed most of the moon, which in turn wrecked the Earth. It sent all the oceans into chaos, and the surface of the planet is constantly being bombarded by debris from the moon. It's not a good time. Anybody who lives there pretty much just lives in underground cities at this point. Humanity was knocked down to 1.5 billion people from almost 5 billion people, and the destruction of the Earth pretty much drove the rest of humanity to go out and explore the rest of the solar system. So people live on other planets, other moons, they live on space stations, all of which are generally named after locations on Earth. The series centers around a ragtag group of characters who are all brought together by fate and live on and operate as bounty hunters off of the ship owned by a character named Jet Black, a former cop. His partner in crime is Spike Spiegel, who is the former hitman of a large but very mysterious crime syndicate. There's also a con woman named Faye Valentine, and an absolute prodigy of a computer hacker named Ed. They continuously go on adventures to take down or capture wanted criminals or recover property, and each one of them learns more about themselves and eventually has to settle up with their individual pasts. We as the audience get to just enjoy these incredibly well-realized plot lines that are populated by wonderful sci-fi and western locales, great side characters, badass ship and gun battles, all while exploring such poignant themes as existentialism, what it means to be a family, and the value of life in the face of hopelessness. The show also pulls no punches in dealing with such concepts as corruption and the disparity between economic classes and more. Jet Black, the owner of the ship, is a former policeman living in a world where, legally licensed bounty hunters are oftentimes viewed as more honorable than policemen. Everyone in this universe is just fighting for survival, and the show never illustrates the choices these characters make as something that should be judged. They're all viewed sympathetically, and we're left to our own devices to decide what is right and what's wrong in this show. And the music. Holy shit, the music for this show is incredible. Composed by now legendary musician Yoko Kanno and the jazz band she assembled to record the music, Seatbelts, the theme song Tank is now iconic by any stretch or any definition of the word, and the rest of the show's music is just this incredible jazz ensemble that is upbeat when it needs to be, thrilling and relentless when it needs to be, and also really sad and melancholy when it needs to be. It just perfectly reflects anything that's happening thematically in the show. The music is an irreplaceable, essential part of the show and the world that Watanabe and his team have built, and the music tells the story almost as much as the dialogue and the animation. Cowboy Bebop is one of the most decorated and award-winning animated series to have ever been produced, and it is still to this day an essential part of pop culture both in Japan and the Western world. The only small caveat for the show is probably the character of Ed, who is probably off-putting for people who aren't familiar with the sort of quirks and cliché tropes of anime. She comes off as kind of grating and annoying at first, but over the course of the series, she becomes the most endearing and enduring character. She is the one who teaches all the other characters how to love again, and she's very much the heart of their strange, wild little family. Bebop clocks in at 26 episodes, and that weirdly seems like a recurring number for anime, and the entire series is readily available on Netflix. And in a rare instance, I actually fully recommend that you watch the dubbed version as opposed to the sub version, because even Watanabe thinks that the American cast was excellent. Steve Blum comes back and he puts on an absolute career-defining performance as Spike Spiegel. It's wonderful. Also, just kind of avoid the live-action version on Netflix. It sucks to say, but it's just not very good, and it's a noble failure. I feel really bad for John Cho, but it's just really not great. If you feel compelled to watch it, please do so after finishing the original animated series, okay? Okay. So, Goldblum, how did you become a beer snob if you can't even drink beer?
Yes. When I'm not busy keeping you alive and preventing the space castle from careening into a planet, I spent a lot of time on Reddit.
That actually explains a lot and answers some questions that are probably best left unasked.
Yes. I know how to change the catalytic converters on a 2003 Volkswagen Golf, and I absolutely know how to turn the Houston Texans into a viable professional football team.
I think that's going to do it for this episode of Space Castle. As always, it is our continuing mission to search the universe for all things nerdy, and I hope this particular mission helped you find a handful of anime series you can get into, even if you don't think you like anime. There is some great stuff out there as long as you're willing and open to try something new. The amazing Galactonaut crew at patreon.com/spacecastlepod have done so, and they've lent me their incredible support as I navigate this fun new project. If you'd like to pitch in and become part of the crew, you can do so, and you'll enjoy all kinds of bonus content and perks on our Discord server, which is always linked in the show description down below. And in that same vein, please leave a comment down below and let me know which anime series first got you hooked, and which shows you would recommend to first-time viewers. And be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell because it absolutely truly does help the show grow, and it just makes me feel good as I'm floating aimlessly through the cosmos. My name is DT, thank you as always for hanging out with me in deep space, and until next time, see you, Space Cowboy, and Cowgirls, and Cow People.